Hello and welcome back to the Nobby on Cars YouTube channel. I'm very excited today to film the brand new Volkswagen ID4, and I've taken the car indoors today because it's sleety, it's freezing and it's especially windy, which are perfect conditions for road testing the range in this car a bit later on in the video. But it's finally here, the ID4. So let's take a little look around it. First of all, this one is sitting on 20-inch alloy wheels. You can get 21. To be honest with you, looking at them, I think 20 will be fine. 21 may be overkill. 18-inch wheels are probably going to look absolutely tiny. Coming around to the front of the ID4, headlights are very similar to the ID3, and this curving line around the front kind of reminds me of the Volkswagen Beetle. You'll get a strip across the front here that lights up. On the front of the VW badge is a little camera that gives you a wide angle view of everything that's up above and a front view when you're trying to park the car. When you come around the side of the car then, it's quite tall. It's, I suppose, kind of the same vibe as the Tiguan. That's what a lot of people who have been reviewing the car already have been saying. The roof of the ID4 is obviously designed with aerodynamics in mind, and the way it slopes down into this spoiler, which assists with braking and slowing the car down, it means that it should, in theory, be very, very quiet on motorways. And I will be taking the ID4 onto the M50 for a drive later on to see how effective that is, and of course how good the range is on motorways, and particularly in temperatures of about 2 or 3 degrees. So if you're here for that, hang on. Now the car is keyless in this edition, and I like the little lights display that comes up here when you turn your lights on or things you want to get in. This red strip, it says I'm futuristic without alienating people, so it does look like something futuristic as a package, but I still don't think it's, you know, a massive jump from an internal combustion engined car, and that will probably help with what people think of it. I mean, yes, there are definitely inspirations from the likes of Tesla in it when you just think of its curves and its size, but I think it also is a pretty looking car overall for something that is reasonably futuristic at the same time. Interestingly, there's no fake exhaust here. There's no real kind of fakeness actually going on in the front either. They've just sort of said, this is an electric car. It doesn't need any vents. It doesn't need any fakeness to make it look like it is a petrol engine or a diesel engine car. The tailgate is under here, so that's going to get dirty. Obviously, you can just open it from your fob on the boot. And the boot is 543 litres, and that's all well and good. But what does that mean in actual real world? Well, some of your comments on social media have said, can you actually measure the boot? So, yes, I can. From the back of the seats to the lip is 92 centimetres, just about 3 foot. And width across, you're talking 50 inches or 125-ish centimetres. So that's a real world term of how big the boot is. Now under here then, you've got a couple of loading options. So that's your top shelf. You've got a second one here, and then down here is a little storage area for your cables. Your Type 2 can go in there, which is nice. Speaking of Type 2, if you're doing it at home with a 7.4 kilowatt charger, it's going to take about 12 hours to fully charge this car. If you've got an 11 kilowatt option, that's about 8. Now you're talking from 0 to 100% in that case, but it means if you are charging your ID4 overnight, when you get home next morning, you'll be ready to go with a fairly decent range. More about that range a bit later on. And obviously these seats do press in and give you extra space, and there's little things for holding bags and a couple of lights, and we have a button for releasing the seats as well into the back of the car, depending on what spec you've gone for. I think I'd go for that though. They're one of those little things that I wouldn't say they're quite life-changing, but they're nearly life-changing. Charging in the ID4 is through CCS charging, extra cap there for that. It will take up to 125 kilowatt charging, which will get you just over 300 kilometers, 200 miles in 30 minutes if you can get one of those 125 kilowatt chargers, something like the Ionity. Using 50 kilowatt chargers, which is kind of unfortunately the general standard around Ireland at the moment anyway, it'll take you an hour to get to 80% using a 50 kilowatt. This version of the ID4 has a 77 kilowatt hour battery, and that means it has the larger range. Now, there is a cheaper version coming in the ID4, which will have a 52 kilowatt hour battery, which is the smaller version from the ID3 too. It's significantly cheaper. After grants in Ireland, that car in standard spec will be €36,000, but will still have a decent range. This one though will get you close to 500 kilometers in theory. Time now to have a little look at the back of the ID4 and see what it's like for passengers who won't be lucky enough to drive it, but will be traveling around in comfort. It is just amazing how much space is in here. If you've only got 2 passengers, you've got this armrest. If you've got all 3, this middle seat is still wide enough. There's ISOFIX on either side, and the leg room, that seat is all the way back pretty much. It's still there, and like you have to stretch yourself to get near it. You got your own personal lights back here. They're just touch screen, they come on. Little neater pockets here, not as clever as the ID3 where they have little stitches that say, hey, this is for a tablet or a smartphone or whatever. So that's here. 2 USB-C charging ports down here, and you get your own climate control. Again, this is a Max model. It's not going to be like that in every single trim and option spec on your ID model, so just bear that in mind. But as an actual space, the thing that isn't going to change no matter what you spend, the leg room is absolutely fantastic, and you would have no problem sitting in the back of this car on long journeys. So, top marks. Really nice features, how those door handles open. They don't necessarily move, and it's almost like a haptic style of door handle. So for those of you wondering, yes, you'll fit 2 child seats in the back. There's also an ISOFIX in the front passenger too, so you can get 3 of those in. So is it a family of 5 car? Will you fit an adult in between the 2 rear seats? You'd probably have to check it out. It depends how small that second grown up in the family is. Phone easily just slots in here and charges, and I like the way this has a little cover, so that all feels a bit better, if I'm honest, than the ID3, because it just feels more like Volkswagen have been Volkswagen. These can also move around, so you can hold drinks bottles and stuff. Ways to support the channel right there, details in the comment section, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, I'd love you to do it. There's plenty of storage space here. That net thing from the ID3 isn't there. So, controls, there's not a huge amount of buttons. You have your 4 main ones here that will turn on your camera, that will put in the different modes, and will display everything on this upgraded 12-inch screen. And again, if you don't go for that, you're going to get a 10. Still big, but I'd imagine once you've seen this version, it's very hard to go back to the other one. In first edition models of the ID4, it's a leather steering wheel. I believe there are vegan options for that if you wish. And you get the smaller display here to go with that larger display. Now, I've been messing around with the screen and I can't really notice any software glitches. So far, so good. This will obviously have the latest version of the software on it. To put down your rear windows, you have to press a button to select rear. You press that, and now you can open the rear, which does go down all the way. And you can control the child locks from a button up the front here as well. That means doors and windows are locked at the touch of a button. All the ID4s, similar with the ID3, get this steering wheel with haptic control buttons, and they click when you press them, so they feel very modern, futuristic. You twist this gear selector that way for drive, that way for reverse. I'm trying to remember on the ID3 were they the opposite way, because I remember that kept tricking me. I was like, if I want to go forward, I have to do it, and it was like the opposite way. And I need to, maybe it's because it's a left-hand drive car actually, maybe that's why. At night time and even during the day, actually, these lights are really bright and they add a real touch of class to the inside of the ID4. So everything is huge. This windscreen is massive. The plastics in the ID4, they're pretty good. They're soft in the touch. It doesn't take too long to get to the harder stuff down here. But does it feel any way more premium than the ID3? I'm not sure. I mean, it's this one is a very well spec'd one, and you've got the softer bits of leather on the door, and they do add to that feeling. But I think it would be a disservice to the ID3 to say that this interior is a massive jump. Certainly the little bits of trim here. do make it feel maybe 10% better, but it's not night and day between the difference, if you get me. For those who aren't too comfortable using a touchscreen on the move, this has the latest edition of Volkswagen's voice technology. You press a button on the steering wheel, the nice lady will ask you what the hell you want. I'd like to find McDonald's.
Search for McDonald's nearby.
So it's hearing me first time. It's actually musing a bit when it hears me talking back. Still organ, please.
Please connect to phone via Bluetooth first. Please remember that you
Now,
should not use your mobile phone while the vehicle is in motion.
That's good advice. Thank you, madam. Now, if I had selected one on the screen, it would have brought me to McDonald's Still organ. So that's first time using that. I haven't practiced it at all. It recognised my language and my Irish accent as opposed to the German accent, and it just worked. So that's impressive. Okay, so the weather today for driving an EV is absolutely shocking. Like, it's really, really bad. It's 2 degrees outside. I've started the car with a range of 289 kilometers. Now, I have been using it while I was been filming the inside, and that was using heat. So will the car use some of your range to heat up the battery when it's cold, and how much of that will be affected? Now, many other people have been driving this car before me. There's about 2,000 kilometers on it, so it's going to have to adjust to my range of driving, my style of driving as well. So plan is just to get onto the M50. We'll see how refined the car is at that kind of speed. Certainly my first impressions, this is, as you're seeing me filming here, is my first time driving the car. It's very, very quiet, and I can hear the rain tapping off the roof of the car, but the surroundings outside are pretty quiet. Very easy to access menus and stuff, and turn the heated steering wheel down, which is very welcome on a day like today because it really is cold. I'm just going to tap on those heated seats as well and see what they do in terms of range. So you also have the eco option in your passenger side. When the car knows that there's nobody in that side of the car, they will do that. Now, it does feel like a big enough car, you know, like it feels like there's weight there, and it's wide, you know, and it feels wide. I like the feeling of the brake pedal. It's not an all or nothing thing. It's smooth and gradual, and that was nice how it came to a stop. So, a bit of a straight road here now, and as I floor it in very wet and cold conditions, there was no kick from the back. This, of course, is a rear-wheel drive option. There's an all-wheel drive option coming, and when the cheaper version of the ID4 goes on sale here in Ireland, that will be 148 brake horsepower. We're not getting the 170-ish version here. That's the one that will be €36,000 starting off, and that's the one that I just think, for the price of, well, a very well-spec Golf, you're going to get this size of car. And for a lot of people, they're going to make the extra jump, work out that worst case scenario at home. If you haven't got a night meter and you haven't done any sort of negotiating with your electricity provider, this car is going to cost you a little bit over a tenner to put a full tank into. And when you have to pay that initial bit extra over something like a Golf, of course, but this is again far bigger, I think people are just going to go, yeah, let's get the ID4. Heads-up display is definitely a nice thing. Whether people are going to actually want to spend the extra in getting that, it's another question. It's nice driving something like this Max version of it with everything in the car, but you have to remember as well that the electric tailgate, these upgraded seats and things like that, they're not going to be standard. So it's important for me not to be blindsided by that, and you watching as well. Obviously, if you're buying this version of the car, well, forget I said anything. So we're on 21-inch alloys here. Just over a little kind of a bump there in the road. It's hard, but not bone-shakingly hard. The lane keeping on the heads-up display is fantastic. You'll get an orange beam, not even centered in the heads-up display part, over to the right. So it actually is bigger than you think it is compared to every other heads-up display I've ever seen. Now I'm just in normal drive mode here, so I'm not flooring it, but put your foot to the floor and you're not getting that neck snapping thing. Now this car is also limited to 100 miles per hour, whatever the equivalent of that is in kilometers, maybe 170. At kind of motorway speeds, I think she... Oh, stop. The nice lady wants to talk, but now's not the time. At this motorway speeds, there is a bit of wind noise. You can definitely hear the air going past the front of the car. Anyway, those A-pillars are picking up a bit. But now it's a stormy, windy day. There's a truck in front of me spraying water everywhere. It's not ideal electric vehicle driving conditions for getting that maximum range. Now, I'm not quite sure why she is trying to do cancel.
Ignition cannot be started by.
But in terms of how does it feel? It feels very, very planted. It feels solid. It feels heavy. It's 2.6 tons, so it should feel heavy. Visibility is really, really good. Like it's like a widescreen. You can just glass everywhere. Now, obviously, this glass roof is helping with that. The surface water around the place. It's all. The road conditions are a bit of a mess today. So I've got 278 kilometers left in a charge at this moment. That's a significant difference to, a better conditioned day. But actually, now that I've notched it back about 10 kilometers, I'm doing 110 kilometers, it's noticeably less wind noise. Certainly the tire noise is very, very impressive. Now I'm on an extremely smooth part of a motorway, to be fair, but there's very little tire noise at all for an EV, where you hear extra things like that. Now these seats are German by design, obviously, but there's some kind of group in Germany and their job is just to see how comfortable seats are. What a job. And these are those kind of German rated seats, and the side bolsters are very comfortable. You've got extenders on them for the backs of your thighs. Again, just a normal driving mode. It's a 200-ish brake horsepower car. Now there's a 300 rumoured version, like the high performance version of the Enyaq coming. But it feels very controlled. When you are accelerating, even though it's a rear-wheel drive car, maybe you've never even driven a rear-wheel drive car before, and you're like, what's the difference? Well, the bar is going to the back, so in slippy conditions, in theory, hard acceleration could cause you to just fishtail a little bit. It doesn't happen at all in this car. It's like a plug-and-play, ready-to-go option for people who haven't driven rear-wheel drive cars before. There will be an all-wheel drive version of the ID4 coming too. I like the way this will tell you now that I'm exceeding the speed. So there's roadworks here. Now I've just gone through them, so I'm going to slow that down now, and it will give you a warning. So you have more chance, or less chance, of losing your license, and more chance of actually staying within the speed limit when it's that obviously in front of your face. Overtaking, though, for such a heavy car, it is a doddle. You just squeeze that throttle and off you go. So I'm doing 110 kilometers an hour, 263 range. That travel assist. Okay, so it was flagging a warning there. Adaptive cruise control is on. Travel assist is activated. So there you go. It's following the lines without any input from me whatsoever. Blind spot is aware of cars around me. Now, within that time, it's now asking me to take over the steering, which is fair enough. But that is more than lane keep assist, obviously. That's travel assist. But it's very, very good. Now, if I don't take over the steering, as it warns me, it's now giving me a red warning. Now, this car is capable of coming to a stop if it thinks you've fallen asleep. So I'm not saying it does the exact same thing if you don't take over the steering, but as soon as I grab that wheel, it's detected that I'm here and I'm ahead. It's also predicting now, it's seen those signs and it's told me there's an 80 ahead. It's braking the car down to that 80 without any input from me. And even on a severe bend, it's correcting that. That's amazing how good that is. So again, take over the steering. But you don't need me to. You do such a good job yourself, ID4. Find me a charging station.
One moment, please. Search for charging station nearby. Please select a POI from the list.
So you can decide what speed you want to go to. There's a 50 kilowatt one, 6 kilometers back that way. One take in terms of cancel. One take in terms of getting it right. It's not asking you to repeat yourself. That's very, very good. At that sustained 100 kilometers an hour, it doesn't seem to be having a huge effect on the range. And the range is obviously significantly less than the claimed today with the conditions and the temperature. But the actual range that it's giving you based on the conditions, that isn't fluctuating massively at all with sustained motorway driving. So my initial thoughts, incredibly smooth, very refined, real feeling of, like, I know you have to factor in the grants, so yeah, of course you should feel a premium for the price of the actual car if there was no grant available, but it does. It's just so smooth, and I disagreed about the wind noise, that it's gone. I mean, it can't be physically gone. You're dragging a lump of metal through air, but it is very, very quiet. Particularly when you're on smoother motorway surfaces, it's just so graceful is kind of the best way I could describe it. The size of the battery means, look, the range is going to fluctuate depending on weather conditions. That's just a given. You have to accept that. It's an estimated reading. This thing is not frantically dropping with 100, 120 kilometer speeds, with heated steering wheel, aircon, seats on. Obviously only one passenger in the car, but still, it's very, very consistent. And we're testing it in the worst type of conditions that you can drive an electric car in. So I would be very, very confident recommending this car as an EV option to people that are interested in one, and this is kind of the budget, particularly the entry-level ID4. That's going to be a serious player for a mass-produced EV. That's undercutting an awful lot, and particularly for the size of this car. So there you have it, guys, the Volkswagen ID4, my first drive in the car. I've been really, really impressed with it. I'm hoping that any questions you have either been answered in the video, or if you want to leave a comment below, I'll try and answer them as best as I can. People are asking about the width of the rear bench. Does that feel a bit wider than the ID3, for example? It does. The car feels wide. Having driven it now for about 100 kilometers or so, I find this B-pillar, if you're looking out, particularly in a left-hand drive car, you're going to be looking to see is your junction clear. That's a little bit prohibitive, especially if the passenger seat is back. So but it all kind of lends itself to it's such a big, chunky, solid car. That's a big B-pillar. The boot's brilliant. The smoothness of it is fantastic. Yes, the range is affected by the cold weather. Every single electric vehicle is in the same boat when it comes to that. When the ID4 is on sale with the cheaper optioned battery size, this is going to be a serious game changer for not just Volkswagen, but for the electric vehicle market. At the moment, there's not much else that can touch this, especially when you factor in that cheaper price. It's not on sale yet, but if you've got the money for this, well, I think finally there's now a serious contender to some of the stuff Tesla have been pushing out. I've really enjoyed driving the Volkswagen ID4 today. Hopefully you've been able to get something out of the video as well. There are ways to support the channel below. It's fully independent and the editing, everything is done by yours truly. So any way you can support it below is much appreciated. And thank you very much for watching.